Namaskar Mitro. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for your patience in waiting for us. We are a few minutes late, and also I understand after walking into this room that air conditioning is not working in this part. My apologies. I think it is related to the regular maintenance, and we'll try and fix it up as soon as possible. But in the meantime, I am glad that the weather outside has become more pleasant than it was yesterday. And I do hope that all of you have brought in this hall parts of that pleasant weather. I have today with me my dear friend and colleague, Joint Secretary Vana, Dr. B. Bala Bhaskar, and also Joint Secretary MER, another doctor. Not really. Not really. All right, Alok Dimri. And so we will first have the briefing on the forthcoming visit of the Prime Minister to Israel. And then, of course, I would request Alok to speak about the forthcoming G20 Summit, for which the Prime Minister will be visiting Hamburg. Before I hand over the floor to Bala, I would request that we finish this interaction in the next 20 minutes. As I was coming into this hall, I have been told that I have to rush for a meeting immediately after their briefings. So I would request you to understand that we will have to take up the weekly briefing on another occasion. Let us first try and complete their parts. All right. But I really understand what you're saying, and we had rescheduled the weekly briefing. So I thank you very much for your understanding and your patience and your understanding in adjusting to the rescheduled time. But I really have to go somewhere on which I have no control, and I have just received this information as I was walking into this hall with these two gentlemen. So without wasting any more second, please, Bala, would you take over for Israel?
Good afternoon, everyone. Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi would be visiting Israel on July 4th and 6th, 2017, at the invitation of Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, on the occasion of 25 years of diplomatic relations between India and Israel. This will be the first ever visit of Indian Prime Minister to Israel. India established diplomatic relations with Israel in 1992. And since then, the relationship has evolved into a multi-dimensional partnership in expanding, which is expanding continuously. This year, both the countries are, of course, both the countries have developed a series of activities to celebrate these 25 years of diplomatic relations. In the recent past, the bilateral exchanges at the political level have been increasing. Our Prime Minister Modi met Prime Minister of Israel in September in 2014, and then our Rashtrapati undertook first ever visit. Rashtrapati ji undertook first visit to Israel in October 2015, and President Rivlin visited India in November 2016. For the last since then, there have been series of exchanges, both at official and parliamentary exchanges. There are several areas of cooperation that include agriculture, water, maritime, science, technology, startups, defense, etc. We are continuously working to diversify and strengthen our bilateral cooperation, besides exploring new avenues of cooperation. During the high-level exchanges for last 3 years, Israel has expressed its great willingness to participate in India's flagship initiatives like Make in India campaign, Clean Ganga, Smart City and Digital India, which are of national priority to us. And there has been cooperation going on in agriculture sector. Again, Israel has established, with the help of Israel, we have established centers of excellence in India, in various states, that is aimed at increasing productivity, crop management, water management, and so to increase the productivity of the farmers. So during this period, we are keen to expand this cooperation into several other areas. We have also huge cooperation in water and, of course, home S&T. We have a very important cooperation in the arena of space and technology. And our trade with Israel last year was 4.16 billion. Of course, trade is in favor of Israel. 300 million, but we are importing around 20% of our phosphate imports from Israel. In a way, it is an important contributor in the energy sector through export of phosphate. So we have, of course, a defense cooperation. We are also keen to develop a greater cooperation on homeland security. India is a very important member of member who is supporting our UNSC membership in the Security Council. I think this visit is going to have a develop and expand our cooperation into several areas and give a definite shape for the future cooperation in several areas. With this, I will conclude. Thank you so much.
We'll open the floor for questions on Israel. Ashish and then Vineet. Ashish first.
Sir, could you please tell us something about the diaspora address that Prime Minister is going to have?
Yeah, Prime Minister.
Take one more question.
Yeah.
So, any of the defense deals that are going to be announced that time?
Yes, when we go there and they will be during the talks, we will see how the agenda develops, and when we go there, we will see how the talks will go on.
The defense deals are on cards?
No, the defense deals is a different exercise. This is a very cumbersome exercise where the people from defense arena, and it is part of the longer negotiations. That is separate, not necessarily with this visit. Diaspora, yes, Prime Minister's, the full engagements are still being worked out, which I'm sure XP Division will give all the details. But as of now, he is landing in Israel on 4th afternoon, and 5th he will have official talks, and then 6th he will be meeting business people and diaspora people, and so the exact details are being fine-tuned.
Agriculture and technology innovation, these are key pillars of cooperation. What concrete outcomes we can expect in these areas?
No, first of all, agriculture cooperation has been going on for a long time. As I mentioned earlier, they have set up 25 centers of excellence in India, in as many as 15 states. We want to, the centers of excellence are now at present are the demonstrating centers for productivity, crop management, and plant supply, and an entire care of the agriculture, particularly in horticulture. We want to expand into several other areas, several states, and see how we can convert these centers of excellence into business commercial model, commercial viability projects. So during our discussions, we will be focusing on these areas.
Yeah. The President and the External Affairs Minister had visited both Israel and Palestine at the same time. But de-hyphenation of Israel and Palestine is taking place on this trip. Has there been any negative reaction to this de-hyphenation in the Muslim world? Thanks.
No, as you are aware that I am briefing on the visit of Prime Minister to Israel, and our relations with each country is independent of our relations with other countries, and we have each relationship is separate, and we have a different relationship with other countries. And as you are aware, Palestinian President was here in May, and he undertook a 3-day visit, and we have exchanged views on that, and so this visit is different as part of the other engagements.
Parul, and then Kalol, and then I see one more hand. Yeah.
The Israeli ambassador here has been quoted as saying that the relationship will be elevated to a strategic partnership level. So, could you confirm whether this will be?
Yes, we are, of course, we will be going there to, we have a wide range of cooperation, starting from agriculture, water, science and technology, education, innovation, now the startups, entrepreneurship, so joint research, joint innovation fund. So it is a very wide-ranging partnership. And so it is, we want to bring a definite shape and advance this cooperation into several areas.
Yeah, Kalol?
Yeah, can you just shed some light about the various cities in Israel that the Prime Minister will be visiting to? And will he also be visiting the Yad Vashem?
The details of the programs, I'm sure, XP division, they are still working out, and they will, broadly, his visit is from 4th to 6th in Israel, and the other details are being worked out. I'm sure XP will give you complete details once these are fine-tuned.
I think India has kept a good relationship with Israel since 25 years ago, but this is the first time for Indian Prime Minister to visit that country. Is there any reason that former Prime Ministers didn't visit Israel?
No, we are talking about the present visit because Prime Minister is going. This is on the occasion of the 25 years of diplomatic relations. We feel it is a very important occasion to visit Israel, and he is going there. So we will focus on his visit, what we have to do during the visit.
So very quickly, because we are running out of time already, and Alok has to do the briefing on the G20 Summit. But if I just may add, Bala, with your permission, one sentence. There has been a very intense bilateral interaction with senior leaders, between the senior leadership of both the countries as well as at the ministerial level. If you would recall that very recently, just the last year, the Israeli president had visited India. There has been the Indian president's visit to Israel. There have been Israeli prime ministers who have visited, and in both ways, across the field of interaction, there have been ministerial visit. And I would also inform you, to those of you who were not there at the Vivekananda International Foundation, that capturing the essence and the spirit of these 25 years of this growing partnership, a short documentary was screened today at a discussion seminar at Vivekananda India Foundation, in which Secretary Shri Amar Sinha was present, and also the Israeli ambassador to India. This documentary is happily made by the XPD division, and to those of you who have not seen it, I would recommend you could log on to YouTube and see it. It captures the spirit of the visit. With that, Alok, I would request you to quickly brief our friends on G20.
So, thank you, Gopal. Friends, good afternoon, good evening actually. Well, the 12th G20 Summit will be held in Hamburg, city of Germany, on 7th and 8th July. The theme of the summit is Shaping an Interconnected World. Honorable Prime Minister would lead Indian delegation and participation at the summit. Briefly, the way German presidency has organized its G20 approach and discourses along three pillars of stability, sustainability, and responsibility. So essentially, that brings some kind of a balance between the traditional approach of the G20's purpose. The stability deals with the macroeconomic stability, the finance track issues related to which came in the wake of 2008 financial crisis, the macroeconomic policy coordination on that front. The sustainability pillar essentially brings into the discourse the issues related to sustainable development, the role of Africa, climate-related issues, the social issues which have come into the G20 agenda in recent years, including food security, women, youth, employment, and job. And the third pillar, the responsibility pillar, essentially touches upon issues of terrorism, anti-corruption, governance. So this is the broad framework within which this year the German presidency had chiseled its approach to the G20 presidency. So the most of the agenda of the presidency would be along these pillars. Briefly giving you the structure of the summit will have two components. It will start with a leaders retreat in the morning of the 7th for about 2 hours, and the subject of the retreat is fighting terrorism. So we would expect that the G20 leaders, world leaders, would have substantial time, and it would be a leaders retreat format. So leaders will have a free-flowing but a very intimate discussion on the subject. And broadly, this also aligns with the Prime Minister's own approach in his meetings with the world leaders, including G20 leaders, with the central thrust on countering terrorism. The work is in progress on some substantive outcome on this pillar, and we would only know as we enter there. For your reference, you would recall that at the Antalya G20 Summit also, there was a standalone joint statement by the G20 leaders on counterterrorism. So perhaps this would be a second occasion where the leaders of G20 would sit down and in a dedicated manner address the issue of counterterrorism. That is the first initial component of the summit. The second component of the summit would be divided into 4 sessions, the 4 working sessions, 2 of which will be over the working lunch. And broadly, these will be on growth and trade, sustainable development, climate and energy, partnership with Africa, migration, health, women, digitalization, and employment. Besides this, there'll be a social dinner, there'll be a musical concert in the evening. So that roughly is the structure of the summit. As you are aware that the G20 deliberations are structured along the Sherpa track, which are headed by the Vice Chairman Niti Aayog, Dr. Arvind Pangaria. So he would lead India's representation in the deliberations along that track, and the finance track is under DA, the Finance Secretary. So he would also be there and giving final touches to the deliberations, which essentially will go in the form of the Hamburg outcome. If you ask me, the focus areas, essentially, more or less, they are the same, but these will be the macroeconomic policy coordination, which has been the traditional area for the finance track, where they talk about a downside risk, they talk about the exchange rate coordination, the currency policies and the need for coordination, the fiscal, the monetary, and the third component, the fiscal structure reform. So all these will be covered under finance track. There are a number of issues there, the ongoing processes, the climate finance, the green finance. There are platforms on inclusiveness. So all these issues will be covered under that. And essentially, the broad optics would be covered by discussions on trade, open and free trade. It is expected that the climate would feature in a prominent way. But again, much has already happened before the summit. But it is likely that trade agenda and free trade and climate would likely dominate the deliberations and the outcomes. Development would remain at the heart of it, but with a different touch this time, that yes, sustainable development would be there. But the focus on Africa, these are the 2 key initiatives of Chancellor Merkel, which is development in Africa and digitalization. So we would expect that there would be deliberations and substantive reflections in the outcome documents in these areas. And then essentially you will have energy. There have been a lot of deliberation on migration-related issues, social stability in Africa. There's an informal voluntary outcome in the form of Africa Compact, which is again a voluntary one. It is Chair's initiative, but this is likely to be announced. Some of the African countries would announce their joining the Africa Compact, which essentially brings in the sustainable development, the investment framework, and the conducive environment, and the private capital, the role of private capital in facilitating that. We would also expect outcomes in the field of women and youth employment in terms of gender equality. So there has been some deliberation with regard to Women Entrepreneurship Forum, and a platform to be established under the aegis of World Bank. So perhaps if there is an agreement on that, that may feature. there is e-skilling, girl child, youth employment, and of course, another key initiative of Chancellor Merkel is in the field of health simulation exercise, where she has laid a lot of emphasis on the global response and preparedness, emergency preparedness on health and pandemics. So these are broadly the areas which we expect to feature in leaders' deliberations and in the outcome documents. So briefly, I would say, if I have kept time limits, sir. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alok. This was quite comprehensive, and I would presume it leaves no scope for questions because I have to run. But I would open the floor for 2 or 3 questions on G20. Yeah.
Any bilateral interaction have been scheduled?
Ranjit, as you know, this is not JSMER's area, but I can answer that question. We announced the bilateral interactions only when, very close to the event, because all these things get coordinated with the help of the local embassy. Our Indian embassy and the embassies of other countries concerned. So there is a process involved in that. And in the past also, we have kept you informed, and we'll keep you informed as and when these things materialize. Vishnu. Mike. We are doing this briefing, and I have to run after this. I would really appreciate if you understand my constraint. Let me finish this part first. Yeah. Yeah. Mike, please.
Sir, can we expect a strong statement on cross-border terrorism in the communique, in the G20 communique? How big will this issue in G20?
Okay.
As you have said that there will be 2 sessions, of which one will be entirely devoted to terrorism. Can we expect support on CCIT?
On G20, yeah, sure.
Sir, it is expected that China is most likely to promote their OBOR project in G20 meeting. So how would India counter that? Because this is a question of Indian sovereignty.
You are not asking a question on China, not on OBOR. All right, I accept that. But Alok, you can choose to answer or not choose to answer, whereby it will fall upon me to answer this.
In that case, I will answer it. Well, first of all, we need to understand that the formal sessions and the leaders' retreat are 2 different things. So leaders' retreat is basically utilizing the occasion that the world leaders are in Hamburg, and the chair has taken an initiative to put aside 2 hours exclusively of the leaders' time, that too before the beginning of the summit, and devoted to the subject of terrorism. That itself is a significant indication of the importance and the concern that the world leadership attaches to this issue. But I wanted to clarify the differentiation that this is not one of the sessions. This is the leaders' retreat. In the sessions, the leader will be seated around a round table in a leaders plus 3 format, and the discussion would happen as per the agenda, which I said it is growth and trade and development and women and digitalization. Every session has. But this is the leaders' retreat, which would be a very intimate surroundings where the leaders, perhaps it will be just leaders themselves there. So far as strong support, well, yes, if the leaders are discussing counterterrorism for 2 hours, you will expect that there will be exchanges, there would be understandings, there would be convergences, and there would be outcomes. CCIT, yes, CCIT has been always there in most of the documents, bilaterally or plurilaterally. But coming to the cross-border, you have to understand that this discussion on terrorism is happening in the not in the regional context, or it is happening in a global context. And rightfully so, if it is happening in Europe and the European chair is the chair of the G20, obviously there would be a greater shadow of what has happened in the Europe, the way Antalya was in the shadow of what had happened in Paris. So those nuances will have to capture. While you're sitting there, obviously everybody will speak. The Britain will talk about themselves. The Europeans will talk. They may talk about the migration as well in this context because they see the linkage between the two. So I guess I had answered all the questions. Yeah, but well, again, I'll have to say that you have to understand the process. These are not settings where the leaders go and they speak at their own volition. There's an agenda on the table, and as I said, that the agenda is growth and trade. And again, these are not one-off meetings. These meetings have been preceded by a number of meetings all through the years. There are working groups like. Before the summit, the Sherpas have already met 3 times, and they will meet again before the summit for 3 days. That will be the 4th time the Sherpas will be meeting. And the Sherpas bunch up all the streams together, like Development Working Group, Trade and Economic Working Group, the Green Financing Working Group. So there are multiple streams in G20 where this agenda keeps getting deliberated, agreed, and pushed up. So technically what comes to the leaders is not in the shape of a fresh initiative, and OBOR has not been discussed in G20.
Well, thank you very much, Alok, for your very comprehensive and wonderful brief, and also answering the questions. Thank you, Bala, of course, for your briefing on the visit of the Prime Minister to Israel. I do have to beg your leave now because I am already late by 3 minutes to the place where I have to be. I understand your. And we'll all be leaving. Look, listen, the thing is, these are all very serious and important questions. They require time. I need to do justice with their answers. And at the moment, I don't unfortunately have the luxury of time, as I was prepared and we had rescheduled this briefing. But I do have to run. Please understand my predicament right now. I do have to run for an engagement on which I have no control for the time of that. What I can assure you is, A, we will try and reschedule the weekly briefing, not on the next Thursday because I am not here on the next Thursday, but we'll try and reschedule it, subject to the whatever else we have in the remaining days before we take off for Israel. In any case, I have received your queries on WhatsApp, on the media group as well as individually, and I will try and answer on the WhatsApp group, either individually to you or on the group as such, as many queries I can today itself. Okay? Thank you very much.